welcome to News 24. My name is Tshidi Madia. We're coming to you live from Nasrec, where the EFF is holding its second National People's Assembly. But to simplify it for you, it's an elective conference. They'll elect new leaders, relook at their policies, and shape the way forward to towards 2021 and 2024, where we obviously have other elections. I will be speaking to a number of players throughout the weekend. The conference ends on the 16th of December. We will be speaking to different leaders. We'll be speaking to, hopefully, some delegates just to get their views on what they want for the party, what's the way forward. So as I come to you now from Nasrec, it's relatively empty. There's a little bit of music. There's a few journalists wandering about. I think it'll be a lot more livelier tomorrow when around 4,000 delegates and guests join us to see, what the EFF does next. I will be speaking to its spokesperson. We'll speak to a politics journalist, Lizeka Tandwa, just to find out, her views about this particular conference and the way forward. But before then, I just wanted to watch this tiny snippet of a conversation I had with EFF leader Julius Malema, where he spoke about what it's been like for them now in the few weeks leading up to this particular conference.
Registration, we are well prepared. We had a dry run where we called random delegates from all over South Africa, gave them to a registration company to scan their IDs and let's see if this thing they're telling us will indeed work. It came out very smoothly. We even brought people who are not delegates without telling the company, just to test if indeed this system does work, and it rejected all of them. So it's all systems go. We're just tired from not sleeping, but otherwise it's a stress-free conference, and we're ready to receive our delegates.
As I said to you, we will be speaking to a number of players in the EFF. I'm starting off today with the EFF's national spokesperson. He is slightly ill. He's coughing. He's coughing up a storm. I'm joined now in studio here at Nasrec by Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Yeah, very sick, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi.
Yes, indeed, I am. I'm very sorry, but we must speak to News 24.
Yes, you must. Mbuyiseni, let's speak about the general mood. I haven't been to UJ yet. I think some of my colleagues have gone. What is it like there? I mean, I look here at Nasrec and it's relatively empty. It doesn't even look like a conference is really about to kick off, but it's there. But what's the mood been like at UJ, and also amongst you guys as leaders who've put together this conference?
Well, thanks very much for having us. The conference registration process has been amazingly smooth. By midday, we had already gone through, in fact, when we were briefing the media, towards 1 o'clock, 2,800 delegates had already gone through the accreditation process. And these are people that come from across the country that have been traveling since yesterday afternoon, most of them, on buses. And so we're talking about people that have been on the road for 5, 7, sometimes even 18 hours if they were traveling from Springbok or as far as Uppington. So the movements have gone in through smoothly into the machinery of accreditation, and now we are moving them into their different accommodations in hotels around Johannesburg. It's been very, very an impressive delegation, collective of delegates that look like they're here and they know what they were about. They're not going to be distracted by any urgent provocateurs. So yeah, the mood is really building up.
But what about within the leadership? There is pressure to pull off a seamless conference. There's always pressure, no matter what the party is. And there's a lot of pressure, particularly around the EFF, because I'm not sure what people are trying to prove against the EFF, but there is extreme pressure to see, is there discipline? How do they pull it off? Is it seen in a smooth project? So what's the mood been like amongst yourselves?
Well, we have committed ourselves as the people who work on the ground to build a formidable organization rooted. These 4,000 delegates, 3,800 to be precise, that are coming from working class communities, from villages, from townships, from informal settlements. They are young and old, and majority of them are first-time activists in politics. You want to really give them a powerful political experience of a properly organized political meeting in which they can begin to get a sense of good service. If we serve them well, then they know how the state must serve them. Serve them with excellence, something that is delivered as well, an excellent service that is delivered by black people. These are important values that all of us sort of embrace and hold very dear. So everything is executed as much as possible with, peculiar excellence. From the seating arrangement, the entire thing is executed with excellence, because we want to give ourselves and the movement and our people, a sense of pride in their own movement, in their own lives, in their own ideas, in their own collective. So because of the mood, because of the excellent arrangement, the level of excellence, you are going to conduct yourself as well in a orderly fashion. You will disagree if you need to, but you will know that the environment I'm in requires me to really pitch
to step up,
qualitative, entrance and intervention. So the leadership is caught up in the organizational detail of the entire conference. There's no time for anything else but to deliver
nursing your flu.
An excellent conference.
Or even nursing your flu. Now, Mbuyiseni, Leanne was speaking at the media briefing about the budget, where apparently it's sitting at 32 million at the moment, speaking about, again, that VIP service that you're trying to give to your delegates. I want to quickly get a run through from you about what the process is. We do expect nominations. I think a lot of us as journalists are looking forward to seeing that nomination process. And obviously, what happens with the top leadership of the EFF. What's the actual program from today going towards, I think Monday is the closing, yes?
Well, we'll have another press briefing to, brace everyone about everything else that happens throughout the day, if we are ready to begin tomorrow an open conference. And the program is the usual. The president will give a political report, which also is an opening address, a welcoming address, and give a political, political sort of input to conference and set the mood for everything else that is going to take place. Then the SG will give an organizational report which, takes us into details of the programs, of the branches, of public representatives, what really we've been up to in the last 5 years. And then the treasurer's report, which will be a closed session, and then these reports will be discussed. We'll go through constitutional amendments, because after 5 years, there are things that we think we can do better. They require some constitutional amendments. For instance, we think the CCT, as you saw in the discussion documents, should be a little bit expanded. Then we'll take nominations for the top 6, or what we call officials. And if there is a ballot, we'll go to the ballot. And we'll break for the day, come back tomorrow, do commissions. And once voting has taken place, we announce we take additionals. And then after the additionals, we take commission reports. There are other reports as well. There's a legacy project that we're going to do a video on about, some of the programs that the EFF has been involved in community building. And then in the end, the president will give a closing address, the newly elected president, and that will be the conference.
Knowing EFF delegates and supporters, do you see it actually going to a ballot?
I don't know. Remember what is significant here. The National People's Assembly, like all the provincial people's assemblies, which you may have been part of, there is really an opportunity for the expression of an individual will in a secret ballot. So once it goes to ballot, it is as uncertain as any democratic outcome. Everyone is welcome to raise any name they want from the floor. The only condition is that the name must meet a certain threshold. For top officials, 30%. 30% of the voting delegates must support you for you to go into the ballot. If you can't reach the threshold, you're not going to the ballot. And then for additional members, it's 25%. So I think that it will be open. You can all watch it. Like we did in Mangaung in 2014, we're not going to hide anything. And when you look at people contesting, don't say they are fighting.
No, it's contestation. It's the name of politics.
Internal, and we're proud. We are really, really proud of EFF members, the level of discipline that they've demonstrated in the discussions internally of the leadership. I mean, the leaks have often been facilitated by supporters of the EFF, not actual card-carrying members who have been not only delegated by their branches to come to this meeting, but largely the people who are actually in the EFF and are activists on the ground. There's been maximum discipline. That discipline, I think that it will continue to the end.
What does the EFF always position media speaking about lobby groups and the differences in wanting to see different kinds of leadership as communicating that you are fighting. You're always fierce in that approach of, yes, you see us as fighting, but we understand it's contestation. We understand that's how politics works. Why do you always take that it's an absolute position where you're at odd ends with us as journalists, where you see this fighting? It's extreme. We understand it's contestation.
I would take you seriously in that question if you were the spokesperson of the media, which would mean you guys have somewhere where you collectively assess your collective treatment to the EFF. You all operate individually.
Absolutely.
As media houses. So that's the first thing. We are at the end where we are interacting with all of you. We are able to know what the coverage, the language, and the narrative structure of ENCA would be, even of specific journalists within ENCA, within Times Media, and so on and so forth. Majority of the journalists like drama, particularly in the broadcasting space. They like drama. And they portray contestation as, there's a huge fight. In the
political battlefield.
Exactly. Actually, the term
but it's
fight,
a political battlefield.
Actually, the word fight, the term fight is what I got from the media, is not what we use. And constantly want to say to people, it's not. And when there's no contestation, they say it's a dictatorship. When there's contestation,
well, in the world of democratic centralism,
and so on and so forth.
But in the world of democratic centralism,
do you know
of Marxist-Leninism,
philosophically, the South African Constitution philosophically is about democratic centralism? Once we have all elected Ramaphosa,
in essence, I'm going to let you win that one.
All of us
in essence,
have to recognize him as president. That's what it means. The decisions.
I think you guys recognize Julius Malema as your president.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to leave it there, and then we'll revisit the question of authoritarian or not. I'm sure over the next few days. I'm going to come back to the media, but I want to skip back to you. It's been 6 years in this role. What has it taken? What has it done to Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, who was busy with a PhD? Actually, I should have introduced him as Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, who was also in Parliament, and then also dealing with all of us calling you around the clock and being unhappy when you don't answer calls, and you know what I mean when I say that. What has it taken? What has that done to you as an individual?
I think all of us have had an amazing journey of both learning and unlearning. Most of the time, it's been a process of unlearning a lot of things that I personally thought I understood. I personally thought I don't understand. But the entire collective has been very much part of the project of communications in the EFF. The president is a brilliant communications expert. The deputy president has been in this role before in other organizations. The national chairperson was the CEO of the SABC. The collective that has been around in the EFF actually understands this space in a very peculiar and an interesting way. So it's been great. But there are huge changes that we need to make in the department, one of which we are proposing strongly is that the communications, head of communications should be full-time in the head office, shouldn't be deployed in Parliament and so on and so forth. So we think that will give you guys in particular, the necessary attention.
Yes, we also agree with that vision. Would you be willing to give up a seat in Parliament to be a full-time at the headquarters of the EFF?
These are collective decisions which it's very important for you as an individual. If something rests in the hands of the collective, it's always very advisable not to personalize it. So I have to constitute myself in the conversations of the collective because it's a consideration of a whole lot of things. So, and that's why that conversation is best left to that collective.
Mbuyiseni, what is your relationship like with the top six? I mean, when you look at the different leaders, who's Mbuyiseni closest to? You're often seen, obviously, with the president of the organization for obvious reasons, but there, who do you draw to on a hard day when we're all annoyed with you? And again, I must say, we do get very annoyed with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi as the media. Who do you go to? Who do you go confide in and say, jeepers, I can't?
With all of them, the officials of the EFF are part of... remember, constitutionally, the president is actually the one who communicates on behalf of the EFF.
Of course, we've seen that.
He is the voice of the EFF. So you're really an aide. And then the officials. So the statements of the EFF are processed by them. Every single thing that we communicate is processed by it's really a collective effort. So when you
And then who do you turn to though on a hard day?
It depends who's available.
You'll take whoever.
So because the president is the one that I'm most likely to always be next to, he'd be the one that I'm like, that Tshidi has started.
Okay, it's good to know where he goes. Mbuyiseni, just before I'm almost done, there's lots of talk about who must take the party forward, what the leadership needs to look like. And even though you're saying it's people outside of the party who are trying to influence the leadership and vocal and leaking to the media, your name comes up from time to time with people saying maybe Mbuyiseni must rise for SG, while others are like, hey, he's too young, he's too inexperienced. Have you been approached to try and lobby for SG? Are you interested even in serving as a top 6 in the EFF? And if they asked you, what's your position on that?
So the nomination process will be open to the media. Those conversations are best left to occur on the ground of conference.
Do you feel you've got enough experience, though, if you were to be asked for that role? Do you think you've got enough experience to do it?
All of that, I don't think that I want to be talking about it here. I think it's best left to the floor of conference. Once the conference officially opens, those questions will be put to any of us officially, and we will answer them in front of people. It's important to do that because the rights to belong to a political party, it's an important thing to take a membership of the EFF. You get isolated, you get ostracized, you work hard, but then we must afford you the privileges that you earn. What is that privilege? That we discuss the leadership question amongst ourselves, that the privilege we hold, we protect that privilege. All of us have a duty to protect it, and not to talk to you, Tshidi, about it because you don't have that privilege, seeing you're not an EFF member.
Happily so. The last question I want to speak about is about the media. I mean, at the media briefing earlier, there was a lot of talk about media houses that are barred from attending, you know. There was a question around Daily Maverick. The EFF, as it holds its conference and its issues with the media, comes up once again. In fact, when I was in the briefing, I kept thinking, okay, here we go again, where once again the EFF and the media are at odds. Obviously, you discuss it at length, the role of the media and how you see the media in your discussion documents, but we can't keep coming back to this particular point where there's this contentious relationship. What is the way forward? Is it to find a way to work with the media houses, or must we expect this relationship to remain as difficult and contentious as it is at the moment?
I think the solution is the strengthening of the self-regulation of the media, because majority of the structural problems that we point out, there's nowhere to go. Sometimes where to go, you are meeting the same people who are in editorial rooms who have to deal with you.
Is this why you've been refusing to meet with SANEF?
Because these are the culprits. Some of them, so they are all conflicted in the conversation. So you've got to strengthen the ombudsman. You've got to strengthen the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. And the media has got to have forums like we do, where they hold each other accountable. Then you will be able to see whether you have been infiltrated by intelligence organizations that are using your platforms to infiltrate political parties and to collapse them. You will be able to see because you have structures outside Media 24, for an example, some independent structure of yourselves, constituted by yourselves, where you subject each other to an ethical code of conduct. At the moment, those systems are weak. A lot of people get away with murder. They can report lies, and there are no implications. They can report half-truths. They can report disinformation. They can proudly say they belong to political parties and still host shows that are political on important platforms where we are supposed to be invited and also speak. They can fight with you, call you names on social media, be very personal with you. And when you say, but you've gone completely personal, point out the conflict of interest that I don't think you can be fair in your coverage of myself because you've already taken a specific view. These questions, I think the best solution is not, the problem is not the EFF. The problem is the self-regulation of the media, strengthening the, otherwise we're going to arrive at a situation like the United States, where different media houses take different sides of politics and there's no independent media that holds those in power fairly in a balanced way accountable.
I've actually never had a problem with the United States model. At no point then do you realize that maybe the EFF must also relook at how it approaches these issues? Is the EFF satisfied also with how it's approached these problematic media houses and problematic narratives? Are you happy with how you've handled it over the years?
I'm very happy because we're forcing an accountability. We've been proven. The people who have been exposed to have been on the payroll of intelligence organizations. So we're not crazy, we're not mad. So our fight back in relation to ANN7, there was a huge restructuring. If we did not put up that protest, which was a peaceful, non-violent protest, where we choose not to associate, that antagonizes you and provokes you to really put your house in order. So it's really a protest, which we have a democratic right to, number one, but number two, it pushes you to really interrogate yourself, interrogate your systems, and isolate people who have already been compromised, who are really just agents of the system that have been planted inside media houses and are compromising proper, fair, and ethical journalism.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that with you, Mbuyiseni. And on that note, I'm quickly going to play a clip from the media briefing where the EFF Secretary General, the outgoing SG, Godrich Gadi, addresses the issue around Daily Maverick and the media and why some journalists are not here. There's apparently over 600 and...
It was about 620 people that we've had to cut short. So actually, I must indicate this. I must put this on the record. There's lots of media houses, not just Daily Maverick. There's Cosmo FM. I can't think of them. So at the moment, there's a lot of substantial organizations. We've had to really cut down. And most of the cases where we're successful is because we got good cooperation. Sometimes people are like, either we all come or we don't come at all. And so in those instances, we couldn't accommodate everyone. It's logistical. We had to cut down.
All right, thank you so much. That's the EFF spokesperson, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, outgoing national spokesperson. We'll see in a few days' time where he lands up, depending on the nomination process and discussions amongst the party itself. As Mbuyiseni walks off studio, I am going to play you that clip from the SG of the EFF, Godrich Gadi, speaking about the media earlier.
On the issue of a Daily Maverick, Lizek, you should know better what was our relationship with the ANN7. And that is our posture and attitude to any media house, be today and tomorrow or even prior. We shall actually conduct ourselves as such, because once a media house decides to define itself outside what is expected of it and its profession, so it must live with those consequences. And there has never been any lifting of any ban if there's anything called a ban. But as a matter of fact, we have got a right of association with any person and a right of disassociation.
So that was Godrich Gadi speaking about why the Daily Maverick is not present at this particular conference. It's a 3-day conference, or 4 days. Friday, well, starts tomorrow, ends on Monday. But now to continue with the conversation around the EFF, I'm now joined by my teammate, my partner in crime, Liz Gatandra from the News 24 Politics Desk. Liz, you heard a little bit of what Mbuyiseni had to say about the media specifically, that the onus is on us to regulate ourselves, that the issue is actually with us and not with them.
Parts of his argument I found fault with, parts of his argument I agree with. I do agree that there needs to be a regulation within the media. I think that we have faltered in so many ways, especially this year, where there's a need for accountability, more than just apologizing, more than just sending an apology.
Printing a tiny little bit on the newspaper saying we made a mistake, we got it wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, we operate under the attitude of accuracy and trust with our readers. So there needs to be that anchor in the media space. Let's
bring it back to this conference. He says when we say they're contesting, or when they're contesting and lobbying, we say that they're fighting. There's lots of talk around Amatorekisi and Amapiano. I know I've been talking about a heck of a lot because that's what I've been hearing from EFF members on the ground, that there are two different lobby groups. One has no chance, really, no chance in hell of producing its favored results, but are attempting to send a message. The one thing we do know is the commander-in-chief of the the EFF, Julius Malema, will probably leave here remaining the commander-in-chief of the EFF. What kind of changes are we expecting to see?
I mean, I think that's one of the biggest problems that the EFF has in the moment, is that it doesn't have a proper succession plan. There's no plan beyond Julius Malema, and that's something that I think would need to be discussed in this conference. Obviously, Julius Malema will emerge. There's no EFF without Julius Malema. He's the face, he's the voice. Everything about him encompasses what EFF is about. And then we have Floyd Shivambu, whom he has walked with since the ANC
Youth League days, yes.
Those two are definite. In my view, those two are definite players that will continue to shape the EFF going forward. One without the other, one needs the other. One has smaller nyana skeletons on the other, maybe.
They can check each other out.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's actually true. I often look at Julius Malema and I wonder who in the party stands up to Julius, because part of the conversations we're hearing is he wants a leadership that's just full of yes men, you know? Doesn't want anyone who stands up to him. But what sort of a leader is like that doesn't want someone in the room who says, listen, I think you're wrong when you approach things this way. Listen, the way you answered that or you did that, what sort of leadership though is that though that doesn't want criticism? Isn't
it the biggest problem? And even how we experience the EFF, I mean, the days leading to this conference, we've asked on numerous occasions to speak to different leaders in the EFF, just to hear their voices on how this conference should carry itself. None of them are willing to speak outside of Julius Malema's I don't want to say dictatorship. Julius Malema's
democratic centralism,
but
really authoritarianism.
Yeah. So that's been a very huge problem, and there's this unspoken fear or that and resistance.
You went to UJ earlier, actually. Yes. I'm going to come back to the leadership question, but you went to UJ earlier where delegates were registering. I remember speaking to one of our colleagues, Susana, who spoke about how some delegates didn't want to speak and some saying you'll get expelled from the party. Yes. I mean, that kind of attitude.
There's a reluctance, there's always a reluctance from delegates, from EFF members to speak to the media, to speak to anyone on the structures of the EFF. I don't know, there's something that needs to happen in order, because Julius Malema doesn't seem to want to change this.
It's working in his favor?
It's working in his favor. I mean, even the questions that we posed in the last media briefing around wings, there was a sort of reluctance to establish these wings. There's a reason why these wings still haven't been established now.
That's an interesting thing. You know, I did speak to him also about the wings after the media briefing, that was held here at Nasrec a few weeks ago. Last week I had a chance to speak to Julius Malema, and he then spoke about how he actually wants the wings, and he wants them to operate very much like the wings do in the ANC, where the women's league, the leagues rather, where they are pretty much extended provinces of the party, and that they should have powers. But then he argued an issue of timing, you know, and that brings about the EFF-SC argument, the student command. Do we know that when we leave here, do we know for sure rather, when we leave here, will there be such a thing as an EFF student command, or will this be the end of that young grouping that was launched by the EFF, that Julius Malema has come out quite severely attacking it for, I think he called them useless.
Yeah, it's critical. He's been harshly critical on the student command, but it speaks to Julius Malema. I mean, he will say one day that he does not want the wings, on the next day he wants the wings, one day he's banning the media, on the next day they're saying no, it's our responsibility. It's all about one man, and that's the problem with the EFF.
So there's no consistency.
There's no consistency with the man himself, as well as there's a policy shift. A lot of policy shifts.
I want to delve into a little bit of that policy shift, because that's what you're alluding to as well. I've seen the policy document. I think you've also had a chance to look at it. What do you make of their policy offering and what they have to debate amongst themselves? Because it's not just about leadership. It shouldn't be. Their policies and the future of the EFF lies in those policies. What do you think? What's the direction that it needs to take?
Tshidi, they've spoken at length about several issues, health, education, gender. They've spoken about the redesign of the organization. They seem to, I mean, it's a thick document if you look at it.
It is. I actually want to show you how thick it is, but you can continue, Lizaka.
It's a thick document if you look at it, and it seems to have all the right subjects, but implementation and how feasible some of them are is the problem.
It reminds me of their 2019 election manifesto where people said, wow, great booklet, a lot of ideas, but really a lot of pie in the sky when it comes to the economy, pie in the sky when it comes to critical issues, even around health, even around, again, going back to the economy, turning around South Africa's very ailing economy, saying it's not enough. There's an issue around coalitions. I think you always talk about coalitions. It's like, what does this say about coalitions? What about, where do they stand? I mean, the EFF as we speak, because they don't operate in a vacuum. In the real world, the ANC is hoping to be given a chance in Tshwane. The very chance that they're asking for is one that they once fobbed, saying, we don't want to rule behind the back door. We don't want to come in via the back door. We want to be voted into power by the electorates. That didn't happen. But now, you speak about flip-flopping. Julius Malema himself saying, we want to be given a chance. There are 15 months to go before we look at 2021 or so. In those months, allow us to turn it around and show you what we can do. We need experience to be allowed to govern. Where do they stand on coalitions?
Strategically, I think it's best. It's a good move for him to take over Tshwane at this particular moment.
When no one really wants Tshwane because it's such a hot mess.
Try and maneuver Tshwane, rebuild there, work in areas, pro-poor areas where he needs that vote. It would work for him. The problem is when I look at that document, I was telling you just the other day that in this entire document, there's nothing about coalitions. Coalitions are really mentioned just once. And given that the trajectory of politics is leaning towards coalitions, I would have expected them to delve deeper into how they want to move towards marriages in different parties. And what kind of parties will they want to align with? Could a marriage with the ANC be a possible, given that there's no Jacob Zuma now, there's the Cyril Ramaphosa in the leadership? Or is the DA, which now is at the helm of John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille, is it still a viable option for them? What kind of parties will they, when they align with those parties, how will they also look in terms of their voters, the electorate?
That is an interesting one, considering that they had played kingmaker status since 2016. One would assume that they use this role and their experiences to chart a way forward. I am going to leave this conversation there because we will be back. We'll be with you throughout the weekend discussing the state of affairs, discussing the state of this particular conference and where the EFF is headed. We'll bring you the nominations. I hear that it's open, so we'll show you all of that. We'll bring you, obviously, the political report from Julius Malema himself, as well as whoever wins, whoever walks out of here. Yes, Julius. As he delivers his closing address. We'll also bring that to you. News 24 will be here throughout until the 17th, live to you on news24.com. For News 24, my name is Tshidi Madia.